Hello, everyone. We're just going to give it maybe 1 minute or two to allow more people to join. Okay, I think we can start. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Pathways to Market Success in the U.S. through Retail and Marketing, presented by Global Victoria. Thank you all for joining today. It's great to see so much interest in today's presentation. Most of you know me, but for those who don't, my name is Mildred Ruiz, and I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Lizzie Moffat. Um, Lizzie, who's unable to join us on camera, looks after the beauty, wellness, and personal care sector at Global Victoria. Global Victoria has an extensive network of 23 offices globally, placing us well to support Victorian exporters across all sectors, to expand into new markets and to grow existing markets. Servicing the US and Canada, Global Victoria has 4 offices in the US: San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Boston, and New York, where I'm based. As you might know, a big part of my job is to guide and connect Victorian brands to business communities in the US, helping them find the expert support they require to do business in such a vast and complex market. I'll hand over to our speaker shortly, but first, I'd like to touch on some housekeeping. So we will be recording the webinar and we will be sharing the recording afterwards. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session. Please don't hesitate to type your questions on using the chat function. Microphones have been muted. However, we're happy to turn them on during the Q&A if it's required. We have 1 hour for today's webinar, so we'll aim to finish right on time. If we don't get to all the questions, we'll make sure your questions are answered via email. Now, conscious to move on to the main event, I'd like to introduce Allison Slater Ray. With over 2 decades of experience at the forefront of beauty, wellness, and retail innovation, Allison has built a career turning brands into industry leaders. She's the co-founder of Breakthrough Beauty, a next-generation advisory firm helping brands from indie disruptors to global icons scale with retail marketing and C-level and hands-on experience. Previously, Allison spent 12 years at Sephora, where she created and scaled the brand marketing team, transforming it into an in-house agency for the retailer's portfolio of brands. As Senior Vice President of Marketing at IT Cosmetics, she helped drive the brand to the #1 position at Ulta Beauty and play a key role in its $1.2 billion acquisition by L'Oreal, the largest in the company's history. Allison was president of MBX, a pioneering Korean beauty incubator, where she now serves as an advisory board member. Today at Breakthrough Beauty, Allison and her partner, Lisa Motzko Hamilton, partner closely with Sephora and Ulta and top trending brands from around the world to achieve success in the US, working with more than 10 K-beauty and global brands, including Anua, St. Bird, Wonderskin, Estee Lauder companies. They craft winning retail strategies and accelerate growth well beyond launch. Allison, thank you again so much for being here today, and the mic is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Millie. Hi, everybody. I know it's super early in the morning right now, but you feel free to put on your camera if you want. I am going to share my presentation here. And as Millie said, I welcome questions and hope this is helpful for you. Let me just put this in presentation mode. So as Millie mentioned, Breakthrough Beauty is the name of my company that I started about a year and a half ago. And it's really perfect for what we're talking about today because we really started the company because we felt that there were so many people that didn't really understand retail and understand the US market. And many brands today are being brought up as digitally native brands, or as many of your brands, they may not be in the US market. And even if you've visited or if you've done business in the past with the retailers, it's ever changing. And we just felt like it was the right time for us to launch our company. We're both, and my partner Lisa, we're super lucky to be working together. We're a great team. So today's agenda. So quickly, I already told you about Breakthrough Beauty, but I'll tell you a little more. I do have some case studies. We'll talk about the U.S. state of the industry, which many of you may know. So I'll go quickly, and then we'll talk about marketing to win in the U.S. And I do think, obviously, marketing and entering retail, of course, go hand in hand. So this will be a great agenda. So this is myself and Lisa, obviously a little more polished here than than I am now. Um, but we have 50 years combined experience. I know that makes us sound old, but I'm going on about 30 years of experience in the beauty industry, and super fortunate that Lisa and I both were able to spend time at retail, but on different sides. I met Lisa when I was at It Cosmetics, and I was overseeing the marketing, and Lisa was the head of prestige makeup at Ulta. And she spent 12 years at Ulta. So we stayed in touch, and this is our business now. So jumping right into the state of the beauty industry today, this is just a quick snapshot of the industry, the size of the industry, and how it's going to grow over time. Of course, we all know that the industry never sleeps. It continues to grow. You can see here what it makes up. This is obviously looking at everything from mass to prestige. So that's hence the reason that personal care is so big. Um, it's interesting that what's called out is that about K-Beauty's growth potential in the US. We work with a ton of Korean beauty brands. And it's interesting to see how much that this has helped propel the growth of the industry. And of course, how much of this growth is also because of indie brands. And then a snapshot looking at both mass and prestige. I think it's interesting here to see where the winners are and what is growing, prestige versus mass. There's definitely been an influx of fragrance overall. Of course, I think we all know that fragrance has been killing it these past few years, really since COVID. I feel like this might be the year we see a little bit of a downturn, but for now, it's really growing like gangbusters. And I think what's growing is a lot of these mass brands that are really propelled by all the hair mists that are out there, and then also the influx of indie brands within this category. And as Millie said, you'll have this presentation, so I don't worry about like taking notes or anything. We'll be sending this over because it's a lot, and don't worry if you missed a slide. What is important here is this just showing you the US market and how it breaks down is really to see what percent of is retail. And, as Since Lisa and I are focused specifically on retail, we think it's important to note that it's still 60% of the business of the U.S. business in beauty. Of course, we know how much it's exploding via Amazon and TikTok shops and other online channels, but really there still is something to be said about walking into a physical retailer and experiencing your brand. Lisa and I specifically focus on that 22% that's specialty retail. We focus on Sephora and Ulta as our main retail partners. And this is really because, number one, this is where we have our experience. And number two, we believe that this is where many brands can grow the most and see the most success. Of course, Target and Walmart are great partners. We are just less experienced in that arena. And candidly, we always recommend using a broker for those retailers. So, and that is not what we do. So, um, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. And then this is just showing you, we go a little bit deeper into Sephora and Ulta. And as you can see, they're pretty much neck and neck. If you think about what the volume is, Sephora has their partnership with Sephora inside of Kohl's, and that's helps to get them to that 12.3 billion that is in line with Ulta. It also helps them to compete in the markets that Ulta is in, as opposed to Sephora. So I do think that this is interesting. They're sort of growing at the same pace. To me, having been in the industry for almost 30 years, and starting at Sephora at a time when they were really just starting out in the US, I think this is the time that Sephora and Ulta are at their uh, I would say most competitive right now. And you'll see the retailers when they're bringing in new brands and they're really trying to lock them into exclusive deals so that they can't go to the other retailer. So, um, and obviously the specialty market is as big as it's ever been today. So this is a little bit about Ulta. This is from Q3. They actually did announce their Q4 results, but this is from Q3 of last year, and just showing you a little bit about where their growth is coming from, what their operating margin is, their comp sales, and you can see that I think comp sales is usually the number that's most looked at, and their comp sales are up pretty dramatically. And so a little bit here, a snapshot at who the top brands are at Ulta. And again, I know you're all on mute. Normally, I would make this more interactive, and I would ask you, all about how many of you have been in Ulta, in a Sephora in the US, but we will save that till the end.
Allison,
But just,
sorry,
yeah,
Allison, I'll just jump in for a sec. We can pop the mics and cameras or mics on if you'd like me to.
okay. Or we can also even do it, and we can just do it in the chat and just to understand, everyone's knowledge level, desire to be like, is this where they see their brand in Ulta or Sephora? Anything you want to share, happy to see it in the chat either way. Um, so just a snapshot of their top brands. I think what's interesting here about Ulta is many of the top brands have not changed over the past years. You will see, obviously, Sol de Janeiro is fairly new within Ulta within the past year and a half, but Clinique, MAC, Redken, Tarte, these have been their best-selling brands for a long time. But they, and that some of these have changed, but for the most part, a lot of their bestsellers are the same. Whoops. And I think what's interesting is since Ulta's new CEO joined, Keisha Steelman, she grew up within Ulta. She's been there for about 13 years. She's really accelerated some key initiatives that I think are helping Ulta to win and be competitive. Internationally, they launched in Mexico. They opened 4 stores. They launched in the Middle East, and they actually purchased Space NK and now have distribution basically in the UK and Ireland. I do know I saw the entire leadership team in Seoul, Korea when I was there earlier this year, and they were just coming from a trip to Australia where they were visiting Mecca. So I thought that was interesting to see their involvement. And I know they have a close relationship with them. They also launched a marketplace, and I think this is especially important for all of you on the phone. Um, getting into retail is more competitive than ever, but one of the things that Ulta is doing to compete with the Amazons of the world is they have launched their own marketplace. And this marketplace is where they often send brands to start. What's great about this is sorry, I have something in my eye, as you can see. It is a selective process. So you have to be accepted to get onto the marketplace. Not anyone can go on. And they really think of this as a launching pad for brands. This is where they want brands to start here. The ones that are super successful, they see that they can bring into store. And as far as the customer knows, you really can't tell the difference between a brand that's on Ulta Marketplace or not. There's just a very small call out that says shipped by and the brand's name. And I think this is a smart move on their part, and it's a great way for them to test brands, and it's a great way for brands to test Ulta without having to go in and investing a ton of money into fixtures and in-store expenses. Um, they're also holding strong on their wellness initiative, and I do think this is somewhat differentiated from what other people are doing in the space. Sephora has specifically said that they are moving away from their from wellness, and Sephora is really leaning into makeup, skincare, fragrance, hair care, and this is a point of difference. I see someone wrote, I'd love to learn more about Masstige and their best retailer price points in the US for success in clean skin. Well, I think we are talking about Ulta would be the place for Masstige. One of the, and I get to this in a slide a little bit further, but the way Ulta and Sephora really differentiate themselves is by the assortment. And Ulta has mass and masstige and prestige brands, whereas Sephora claims to only have prestige brands. But as you can probably see, they're bringing in a lot more lower price brands and being a little bit competitive, but they still consider those brands prestige. Let's be honest, everything is blurred. And I think masstige is where a lot of brands are playing today. A little bit about Sephora, and this is the financial performance for full year 2025. They were up 4%. They increased their market share 4%. Their budget remained almost flat for this year. I think what's interesting is also their Ulta and Sephora are competing with their loyalty programs. Ulta has their loyalty, Sephora has the Beauty Insider program, and they both have between 45 and 47 million members. And it is such a great way to, especially with Ulta, to actually do exclusive offers and promotions to go after a specific audience. You can really slice and dice the audience there. Sephora's been aggressive about opening stores, as has Ulta. Sephora also just launched their own platform for influencers and content creators called the Sephora Storefront. And that idea is really for them to capture some of the revenue from the influencers and to ensure that they're driving to Sephora. I think what's happened in general is whether it's an influencer or a blog or anything that's content, people wind up sending it to Amazon or TikTok shops. Number one, because it's usually there first. But also it just seems easier. It's an easier way for people to shop. So Sephora is trying to reap some of that back, and ensure that they can garner some of those sales and not drive volume to Amazon or TikTok shops. Although both retailers just announced a partnership with TikTok shops. Ulta it Ulta actually launched their initiative just this past week. It's very small to start out, and Sephora will be executing drops. I believe it's starting in May. Well, they'll do limited drops of exclusive items not found in Sephora, not found anywhere else, and that'll be super interesting to see where that goes. I could probably talk all day about this, so I think I mentioned the creator storefront. I think what is interesting about is their new partnerships that they're doing. They're big time going after female athletes. They're doing a ton of just sponsorships. They did something with the women's basketball team. They're doing F1. They are doing college campus things, as is Ulta, but they're really going out there in a more interactive way and looking for unique partnerships. And here's a snapshot of their top brands. Also, this has not changed so much over the past few years. And many of these brands are the same as they were, in the past 5 years. Getting into Amazon, I feel like this is an area that everybody knows pretty well. I think this is where you really see some where the indie brands really shine. Obviously, Medicube is a top Korean brand, but a lot of these brands are more independent and lesser known brands. Wonderskin is actually a client of ours, and I have a case study at the end of the presentation, but we helped get them into retail, and we did it in a really unique way because I think this is where there's, the retailers want brands that are going to be here in 5, 10, 15 years, and they were not sure, is Wonderskin just a trend? It's a single product. Everyone knows Wonderskin, right? The blue peel off lip stain. So they're killing it on Amazon and on TikTok shops, but it just was the question of, is it here to stay? And I think we helped the retailer understand that it is, and launched in a unique way, and now we're expanding. And then here's TikTok. You can see some of the top brands here. I think what's so interesting is that 80% of all sales on TikTok shops are health and beauty. I mean, it's just, that's what's happening there. They're growing tremendously. Anua is also one of our clients. We helped get them into Ulta. And as a digitally native brand who was in retail in Korea, they just didn't really understand the US market and how to invest and how to storytell and really even who to talk to. So we've been really fortunate to have them as a client because they are the #2 Korean skincare brand today. This chart just shows you a little bit about the differences between the two retailers. And really, I think the fact that Ulta has their salon in store, they have both mass and prestige. They have a bigger footprint in store. It's brighter. They really stand out from Sephora, which is like pure play prestige, very much about storytelling. Sephora is much better at building brands and helping to storytell with brands. They're really consider themselves a brand incubator, whereas Ulta is just learning how to do that. Sephora, their merchants really help guide and advise brands in a way that allows them to be successful. And I think I'm looking at the time and being conscious, and I do want to get to the marketing, but I know that this is important for all of you as indie. I don't know if you're all indie brands because I didn't get a chance to look at the entire list, but I'm guessing the majority of you are. I think it's funny that they say an indie brand is under 300 million in annual revenue because Of course, that's like a tremendous number, but obviously the differentiator is that they're independently owned and operated, not part of a multi-branded conglomerate. And I think indie brands are winning because they're so much more nimble. They're able to do things differently. They are hopefully creating a new product that hasn't been seen before. They're looking into white spaces. And just a little bit about the trends is K-beauty, clean beauty, personalization, wellness. And these indie brands are really like the customer's really responding to them. And you definitely see it across all categories. Here's just a snapshot of some of the trends. Food for sure. I think this has been a trend for a while. And then you see what Rhode did. But there's so many brands talking food. I think I love the idea that that's everything sensorial. Obviously, this is really about being digitally native, and that when it comes to digitally native brands, you have to make things sensorial and experiential because that's what's going to get people interested. How can you show that a product is all about experiential? Longevity, oh my gosh, longevity is everything right now. I think this is where you have to be careful because it has to be true to the brand. But, this whole idea of healthy aging and, not talking about anti-aging, but aging in a healthy way that allows you to be your best at whatever age you are. And like health optimization is really interesting. Okay. I'm not going to go over this. Okay, this I do think is interesting because I think the US customer can be somewhat different than other customers. They certainly, what's important to them is really having an emotional connection. Of course, there are those impulse buys and they got to have it, especially when it comes to things like a mask. But there is really a lot to say about having a connection to a brand, whether it's a founder who's speaking, whether it's showing behind the scenes, but really understanding the brand's credibility and being able to connect with them. And that is, to me, that's what is going to differentiate the brands that are going to be around for a long time versus the brands that are just, a trend. And I think an example could be a brand like Biodance, let's say this Korean mask brand. I think that it's such a cyclical product and item, and how does that brand really continue to tell a story about what differentiates them amongst the other mask brands and the other Korean skincare brands. So, and then obviously the number one thing driving customers in store today is TikTok. By far and away, of course, Instagram, YouTube, all social media, but TikTok is what's driving people into retail. And just knowing and having launched brands in retail, they are coming in and asking for the brands because they've seen them on TikTok. And so I think this cannot be underplayed, and it has to be a crucial part of any marketing mix. And then, of course, why retail? You could be a digitally native brand forever, but we, as former retailers and focused on retail, we really believe a couple of things. Number one, there's nothing like seeing a brand in person and getting to touch and feel it, but also it gives it such a level of credibility when it's on the shelves of any retailer that represents who they are. It also allows for more storytelling, more experience, all of that. But I really think when you're thinking about what the long-term strategy is for your company, do you want to exit? Do you want to sell the brand? There are almost zero exits that have happened that are for digitally native brands. For the most part, the people who are looking to invest and to buy brands really wants to see that a brand is in retail. And that's sort of crucial. Okay, so what's for 2026 and beyond? I think Wellness can continue to be a category. Product performance is table stakes. Um, I think that AI and everything that AI can do is going to become super important. So I hope everyone, and we'll get to this, is looking into GEO, or basically ensuring that your brand is AI powered. Um, we are seeing new retailers pop up. There is a retailer, Suki Soshi, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, that's selling all sorts of Asian brands, but they also have um, sort of like a kitschy section with more fun things. I do think brands becoming more lifestyle brands and going beyond just the products that they're selling is going to be an interesting shift. The dupe culture, I am so not a fan of the dupe culture. I hope none of your brands do dupes. As someone who values brands so much, I have a real problem with this, but it is here to stay. And I have to admit, I have purchased a dupe fragrance for my daughter um, because I'm not spending $300 on a fragrance for her. But and I do think that brands that have a story to tell and that have history um, and credibility and can live by their brand story are who's going to be successful. Okay, retail marketing strategy. This is really about how you can win in the US and how you drive brand awareness. So, Millie, any comments, questions? You're muted. You're muted.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions so far before we enter into section 2 or marketing section about what we just covered?
I do. It's Lizzie Moffat from Global Vic here, and I'm sorry I'm not turning my camera on. I do have a question for you, Alison.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Sephora does really well as a brand incubator, and Ulta is just sort of venturing into that space now. Do you see more brands succeed when they first enter Sephora as opposed to Ulta? And how do you see that sort of relationship?
So, not necessarily. It's a good question. Um, it's not to say that one retailer is better than the other, or there's more success. And if anything, I think there's been a lot of brands who have exited retail, or specifically Sephora, and have been pretty vocal about how hard it is to be successful and how much it costs. So I don't think that one is better than the other. I just think that Sephora is a little bit more sophisticated and can help guide brands a little bit better. But depending upon what category you're in, and this is true for all brands, it can be so expensive to launch in retail, and really cost prohibitive. Both retailers have programs for new brands that are less expensive. For Sephora, it's the next big thing, and that is where you can feature a smaller assortment of products, even a single SKU, and you don't have the cost of producing like inline fixtures and things like that. For Ulta, it's called the Sparked program. And with both programs, you basically save on costs, and there are marketing benefits that they do that are complementary. So they're both trying to give more cost-effective ways to launch in retail. And it's something that Artemis, the CEO of Sephora, has pointed out is a real problem, but um, I don't think we've solved it yet.
Okay. Can you give us a bit of an idea as to what it costs to launch into retail in the US? And I know this is a topic unto itself, but I
Well,
mean,
I like to say that a brand needs at least $1 million to go into retail in the US. And
yeah.
that's probably not counting a lot of things. And that's really about the marketing that needs to happen outside of retail, the marketing that has to happen inside retail. And I'm going to go through that in this presentation.
Yeah.
But uh, that's really what I think. And look, there are our brands who have done it for less. There are brands that have said that they don't do any marketing and they've relied solely on organic growth. But I think those are more the exception than the rule.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just one more question. With those two programs you mentioned that Sephora and Ulta have, so the Next Big Thing and the Sparked program with Ulta, I'm assuming they're by invitation.
Yes, for sure. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, sometimes you'll be pitching the retailer and you won't know where they will choose to put you. You might want to go immediately in line and they might say, we want to do Sparked and a couple of in-store. It really depends. And there are pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
And I think overall, Sephora is the harder retailer to get into because they seem to have less space and be a lot more critical. Ulta
Yeah.
right now is letting in more brands and taking more risks, but also exiting quickly. So they're definitely all about fail fast.
Yeah, okay. I've just seen a question. Thank you for answering all of those for me. I've
Course.
just seen a question here from Leanne. Do we need 1 million to do Ulta next big thing? So, yeah,
Ulta is Sparked and Sephora is next big thing.
sorry,
I
yeah,
think so. You won't have the cost of the fixtures and you won't have as many retail marketing costs, but I think the investment needs to be made in the brand. And that means marketing externally to grow brand awareness. And maybe you're already doing this. Maybe you, in anticipation of launching in the US, you're already investing in marketing. And so maybe it's not incremental, but so yes, you're correct. It would be less if you're going in those ways.
hmm Thank you. Does anyone else
So,
have any questions before we move on? Haven't seen anything pop up. No.
and
Back
how much time at the end do we want to save for questions? I'm just conscious of time.
Maybe about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. But if anyone has questions, just feel free to pop them in the chat box.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
So I think here, really, I think the point here is, getting in store might be the easier part of actually selling through once you're in store. And this is just telling you the importance of marketing. And, the retailers really expect you to be doing all the work, all the heavy lifting. They are assuming that you're going to drive traffic to their stores. So I think that that's why I talk about marketing so much because what they're going to look at when they're assessing a brand, they're going to look to see, okay, what marketing have I seen from the brand? How big is your like TikTok presence? Are people talking about you? What's happening? What are your reviews like on Amazon? What are your reviews like on your own D2C? How have you built community? And those are the important decision factors because they need to know that you're going to drive traffic to them. This is just talking again about how the US customer buys beauty. We talked a little bit about this, but I think it's important to note that obviously the path to purchase is all over the place when it comes to the customer, but there's a few things that I think are consistent and often just important to note as they go throughout that journey. Number one is really about like this emotional connection that I discussed already. It's not just the emotional connection. They still need this sources of validation before they purchase, but it might be what hooks them in from the beginning. Um, and when we talk about sources of validation, that could be everything that I just mentioned before, from creators to reviews to even, a friend just telling you, like word of mouth. And we like to say that the US customer needs at least 9 touch points before they make a purchase. Now, there are always going to be those late night scrolls where they are instantly buying something that sort of fits all this. They're like, oh, I can see that this solves one of my problems. I can see that I have validation because I trust this person who's telling me. I can see the reviews here. Like basically they're already being sold in one experience, but that is definitely the exception to the rule. So as you're thinking about once the person sees your product on shelf, you're going to want to think, okay, they've already had 9 experiences. They know your brand name. They know what it stands for. They know what your hero product is. And they're like, you know what? I've wanted to buy this. And now that I see it's on the shelves of Sephora, oh my gosh, like now I really trust it. So I'm going to make a purchase. I didn't go through everything, but I think you can see all them here. This is just showing, yes,
Allison,
yeah,
sorry, I have a question. So,
please.
how should an Australian brand position itself to connect with the US consumer? What would resonate the most with the consumer according to
So
your
I
experience?
think it's very difficult without knowing. It's very specific to every brand, but I think you can ask a couple of if you think about this whole all of these things, you can ask yourself a couple of questions. Do I like for the first, do I have a clear brand story that people can connect with that is differentiated from other brands? That to me, because that's usually the emotional connection, right? Do I have clear proof points that from external sources that are not me, whether it's a doctor, a dermatologist, a trichologist, an esthetician, multiple of these influencers, reviews, anything that's a source of validation. Um, do my products solve a problem? Do they solve a problem that is potentially an emotional problem? Could be bad hair, it could be acne, it could be like, I just want my lipsticks to stay on longer. Does it solve that problem? Is it a recognizable name? Is it clear what your brand name is or your product name, that it's recognizable and repeatable? And is it visually appealing? Does it stand out? Is it like, I mean, I like to say there are plenty of brands that are successful in spite of themselves. Because a brand like Anua, when they were doing insane volume with their hero products, which was double cleansing. It's an oil cleanser and a foam cleanser, and it's in white boxes. The name isn't clear. I don't think many people even knew I mean, I know for a fact people didn't know the brand name Anua. They knew the product they were buying, but if you ask them, what are you washing your face with? They would say a heart leaf cleanser. They wouldn't know the brand name. So, they're still doing amazingly well, but this to me is an opportunity. Think of how much better they could do if people knew the name Anua. So those are just some things to think about. Obviously, this is assuming that the formula and the product perform and are exceptional. And of
Right.
course, value. I didn't put in here value, but I think this is where where the third point, outcome driven and time poor, that is value, right? If you can do something in the right amount of time, there's value in that. So value isn't always about the price. It's about how is it valuable to me? For me, it is about saving time. Multitasking products. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Yes. Thank you.
I'm going to skip some of this because I don't think we're going to have time to go through everything. But so for brands that are saying, does my brand positioning stand out? Is it differentiated from everyone else? I think these are some questions to ask. And I do think there's so many brands that are doing really, really well that don't have a strong brand position. So, who is this for? So these are the questions we want to ask. What problem do you solve better than anybody else? Why you versus everyone else? And how are you different than everyone else? I think the how is really what continues to differentiate you and what is going to ensure that you, have what it takes to be around in 20, 30, 50 years. So one of the things, Millie, to follow up on your question, I do think the hero product strategy is really crucial for any brand. This is, of course, there are some brands that have systems and that have, you need all these products. But I think leading with the one hero product and understanding, okay, when your customer buys into this hero product, what's the next product they're going to buy and why? How do we get them to buy a second product? And what is that logical journey? And then how do we get them to buy a third? And how do we get them to buy and repeat purchase? So that hero product is crucial. It'd be nice to say that all your SKUs are doing the same volume, but I know that's not the case. And without having leaning into one hero, or multiple heroes, it's very difficult to win over customers and the retailer. And I think this just gives some advice on how to do it when it comes in store. So I talked about Anua quite a bit. I actually have a much longer case study on them in the back, but they came to Breakthrough Beauty and they weren't really sure what their exact message was, how they were differentiated, what they wanted to tell to ensure that customers understood. And given that they were a digitally native brand, for some people who walked in the store and saw the brand, they would have not known it before. And so how do we give it credibility while also having limitations? You can't use the word TikToks. You can't use things like number one. There's a lot that you can't say on shelf. So we decided to go after this message of 40 million sold. That for some that might sound like a little. I think they're at 100 million sold today. But and we also really leaned in heavily to this hero product story and the double cleanse story, and really educating people on how to double cleanse. The great news is they had so much content out there already explaining the right way to double cleanse, really showing the results and showing their fingers with all the gunk that came out of your pores when you double cleanse. So people were intrigued and interested and they wanted to try it for themselves. And what was really amazing about this is when we launched at Ulta, the guests were coming in store and asking for the brand. They did such a good job of saying it was available at Ulta. And what happened was it sort of had a reverse flywheel effect where the people that were working in store, some of them knew the brand, but a lot of them didn't. And it forced them, okay, I'm going to go watch that video that Anua gave from education. I'm going to learn more about the brand. I'm going to make sure I take home the samples. And it was really such a unique situation to see that happen, knowing that this was a brand from Korea where the name was a little bit less recognized. Okay, now here's sort of the 6 things that we feel are super important for the marketing engine. And we'll walk through each one, given that we only have 2 minutes. It'll be quick, but creator awareness, paid amplification, affiliate validation, earned authority, community and retention, and AI and search discovery. And there's a lot more, but we're limiting it to this. So awareness obviously creates familiarity. Familiarity builds confidence. Confidence drives conversion, and conversion drives velocity. And this is obviously what leads you to get a spot on the retail shelves, but also hopefully to grow within that retailer and to continue to grow across all your channels. And we obviously want all channels to be lifted, not just retail. This just shows you a little bit about budget examples. You guys asked for different scenarios. So we really go into breaking down what each of these could look like and at each price point. This is just a snapshot and a sample. Of course, it could be done for less, but we just want you to know what this really looks like and what some examples are of brands and how they've looked at their budget. And this is just through the Ulta lens specifically for this example. I do want to just go back to this slide for a second and just talk to you. Does anyone have any questions on this? So I feel like this is a place where there might be some questions.
Maybe if you want to spend 1 or 2 more minutes in it, I think this is super interesting and could be really useful. Yeah.
So I think the first point is obviously this is about UGC, influencer content, basically getting others to help tell your story. I know that everyone is doing this now, whether it's organic or paid. But once you have the right message, which changes all the time, how do you amplify that through paid amplification and really ensuring that what's working is going to reach a lot more people? Of course, there's the flywheel effect when you have affiliates where, okay, I see that this content's really resonating. I too am going to go make content about this double cleansing and hopefully make some money. And so it's really through the affiliates that you have people organically wanting to create content and wanting to be part of that brand's story. Earned authority is about awards, events, press, different recognition, anything that is that you don't pay for, but that you earn through relationships, events, and things like that. I would say definitely public relations has been if you were to cut somewhere, I feel like this is what gets cut because how much does it convert to sales is a question, and everyone can say we have millions and billions of impressions and we have all these awards. At the end of the day, if it doesn't convert to sales, does it matter? It does give validation and it does give a certain level. It might help with conversion, but it's not going to be the only factor. Community and retention. I mean, this is all about how do you, this is about building community around your brand, whether that's a physical community, a virtual community, whether it's live events, whether it's happens away from your website. It's a Facebook group or it's different groups. However, community is built is unique to each brand, but you really see it come to life when you're doing events and you can engage and really talk to your community and understand what they love about your brand and why they're purchasing it. And then AI and search discovery. I mentioned this before, but no one to this day, no one is actually, or very few people are actually shopping through their ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. But having your brand be prepared for that is, I think, something that's important. So as you all know, when you used to type into Google, you would just say best mascara. Now you're saying, what is the best mascara for a woman who's 40 to 50 and lives in a dry climate? So how is your brand popping up when someone's asking such a specific question? And that's what it's really about with AI and search discovery. Hopefully that was all clear and that we have time for questions.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? No. If we don't, maybe Allison, we have a little time? Oh, there is a question. So someone, I mean, try to.
The question has come from Kaya,
sorry.
and it's she says she'd be interested in looking at the example budget again. If you can flick back to that slide, or not necessarily the budget, but the What
The
slide was it?
it
It
could
was,
be this budget slide. Yeah, I can
oh
pull
yeah,
that up.
yeah.
Hang tight. Oh, in the appendix here, I do have more information and case studies that you could read.
Great, thank you. We will be sharing the
Okay.
slides afterwards also.
So what's the question?
Sorry, is there, Kai, did you want to ask a question about this one, or you just wanted to have a look at it? Because we will be sharing the slides afterwards. But feel free to pop your microphone on if you want to jump on and ask Allison. Just another look. All good. Is there anything you wanted to elaborate on that, Allison? Anything that stands out?
No, this
I
is
mean,
just like this is just a sample. It's not set in
yeah.
stone. It's not I know it's scary for most brands, but I think just knowing how competitive the environment is in the US, it's somewhat of a reality. And it doesn't mean that you should be doing these specific things, right?
Yeah.
And but it's just showing you a little bit about an example of what some of those could be. And it says here not including retail investment. That really means like the cost of the fixture and things like that. But in here there is some media included in like paid media. You know, when we say like 10 pull campaigns, those are usually like the retailers
Yeah.
campaigns, and if
Yeah.
you participate in those.
Okay, thank you. We've had a couple of other questions pop up. Do you help with investor avenues, Allison? A lot of the brands would need to raise.
Now that I'm showing them this, we help prepare brands for their financial raise, but we don't actually do investor outreach or fundraising. That's not something
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah, fair enough. And one question that the last one that has come through is, can you share with us a little bit more about how you work with brands, go through your services, and why breakthrough?
Sure. I
Thanks.
can show you a list of what our services are. The way that we work with brands is we start by doing what we call a retail readiness assessment. And that is where we really look at the brand, we ask you a million questions, and we try to look at it through the lens of the consumer, the retailer, and the brand, and to say, do we feel you're ready for retail? And when we say, we specifically mean Ulta or Sephora. And we could be wrong, but we were working with the retailers for so long, and we really like to say, okay, if you're ready, then we can work with you and help you prepare you for a pitch process. And then we really help as if you get into retail, what does that look like? Help you onboard and manage the business. It really depends on what your needs are. But we can manage the account so you don't have to hire a full-time person. And for that, we usually charge like a monthly retainer. I have given Millie a very nice offer and like discount for brands that want to work for the beginning with us in terms of looking at what we can do and assessing some brands to see if they're ready for retail. The reason we do this assessment also is because we find that when brands go through fundraising and they hear, look, you all have heard no a million times. You're launching a brand. You've also heard yes when you didn't expect it. But like to really understand why someone is potentially saying no, we like to be really honest and upfront and say, okay, you know what? Like your reviews on Amazon are not as great as the sales reflect. And like, this is a disconnect for us. Or, you know, there's many things that we look at. Your packaging is not going to work in retail because I can't tell what color any of these products are in your makeup brand. Things like that. So we really like to give specific feedback. And sometimes we'll say, yes, all these things are true, but we still think you're in a good spot and we should pitch you for retail. Hopefully that helps.
And that helps a lot. Thank you. I do have a follow-up question on that. When you start working with the brand, you know, doing that retail readiness assessment, typically how long would it be before you actually pitch a brand to Ulta or Sephora? Is it like 6 months, a month, a year, or it just depends on the brand readiness?
It really depends on the brand. I mean, we turn around a retail readiness assessment in less than 2 weeks, assuming that the brand answers all of our questions, right? Like, and we really need to get under the hood and understand the size of the brand, and the, you know, where you're growing, what the opportunities are. There's lots of questions we ask. And then depending if you have a presentation that's really good shape and you are, you know, you're ready to ship samples and things like that, we can make a pitch happen pretty quickly. So I would say within 3 months, but then it's like the process of finding out, that's what could take a long time. We have some brands that we've been working with. It was funny. They were like, we thought this was going to be 3 months. And then, you know, almost a year later, they found out that they got into retail, but they're so happy with the outcome that it was sort of worth the wait.
Yeah, of
And
course.
also, like right now, the retailers are talking about next spring anyway. So you're talking about almost a year from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Sorry, I couldn't put it in the chat. With the Ulta marketplace, we were invited to it but couldn't do it because we were an Australian business. So can you see any workarounds with that, or?
Wait, I'm sorry. What did you say? You were invited, but you can't ship?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
No. We've got all of our everything in the US, but when we were setting up the account, we'd have to fill out a W-9 form which states that you're a US business, which we're not. And even just creating a simple LLC doesn't bypass that.
That is so strange. Because did you talk to the team there, the marketplace team?
Yeah.
And they said you had to have that?
Yeah. Do you know any other Australian businesses on the marketplace?
I mean, I know plenty of other businesses that are international that don't necessarily have a US division, but they ship from the US. Let me take that back and see if it's something that we can help out with. If you want to send me an email, I'm happy to try to solve this for you because that seems a little crazy.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Allison, we'll be sharing your contact information afterwards. But if you want to pop your email on the chat box, probably
Sure.
some brands will be able to make use of it.
And just note, I am actually doing this from vacation, but there's really never a vacation. So, but if I'm slow to get back to you, that's
thank you for doing this whilst you're on vacation, Allison.
Of course. I wish I could meet all of you, and hopefully I will. And you know, we're always willing to talk, like, and we love meeting new brands. So even if we don't work together, you know, happy to meet anyone and learn more about your business. So thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll be sharing the presentation.
Okay, great.
Thank you again. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.